This is our fault. This is literally, directly, empirically, objectively our fault. There's going to be an overwhelming temptation on my part while I talk about this to be smarmy, because I turned out to be completely right, and thousands of people made fun of me for saying this, and I turned out to be completely right. But this is the only acknowledgement that I'm going to make of that, and the rest of this is just going to attempt to be a somewhat serious acknowledgement of what's taken place. So, for those of you who don't know, we pulled out of Afghanistan. Finally, after like 20 years, we finally did it, with some caveats. I'll get to that. And, well, this was the decision which was met with not a small amount of controversy at its time. Here, this is an excerpt from Biden being questioned.
Is the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not.
Uh-oh.
Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world.
Joe.
And an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true.
Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not?
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion.
So what is the level of confidence that they have that it will not collapse?
The Afghan government and leadership has to come together. They clearly have the capacity to sustain the government in place.
And do you see any parallels between this withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam, with some people feeling...
None whatsoever. Zero. What you had entire brigades breaking through the gates of our embassy. 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not at all comparable.
The irony there is that, like, just the other day, we sent in troops to evacuate the embassy.
So the question now is, where do they go from here? That the jury is still out. But the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
Highly unfortunate. So here's what's happening, okay? After a very long time spent in occupation of Afghanistan, we pulled out. And the Taliban has just wrecked face. This is from 56 minutes ago. The capital city, wait, not the capital, the provincial, this is the province, the capital of the province, falls to the Taliban at 56 minutes ago. Literally, if you go back through the live reporting on what's going on, it's like every 6 hours, it's like, this city just fell, this city just fell. Literally, like a tide, the Taliban is just taking back the entire country. With virtually no resistance. And there are a number of reasons for that. Yeah, look, 1 hour, 53 minutes ago. Yeah, there you go. They're advancing right now towards Kabul, which is the capital, a 4.5 million population city. That is a huge city, and they are already on its outskirts. It's entirely possible that Kabul will fall within a few days. In fact, it's likely that that's going to happen, probably within the next 48 or 72 hours. 4.5 million people, or is it 3.5? There's a map that I had on that. 4.5 million people. Yeah. Here's a map of Afghanistan, by the way. Official sources say 30 days at most. It's pronounced Kabul? Kabul, thank you. I would be surprised if they lasted 30 days. I'd be surprised if they lasted 10. Man, look. The government that we put into place in Afghanistan is famously corrupt, and remarkably ineffective. It is a government which is not widely liked by its people. They control a military which is not well armed, which is not well armored, which is not well trained, which is not well outfitted, and is not high in morale. The Afghan military is about 180,000 people. The Taliban are about 75,000. And the Taliban are winning. In spite of them not being or having access to the resources of an actual state government military. There are so many reasons for this. Any effort I make to describe any of this or talk about it is going to be really, really shallow. If you want to learn more, then you need to look into other sources, because this is like a fractally complex conversation that could take hours in its totality, or days. But I'll talk about what I think is most important. So, first of all, we have to do a little bit of a call out to some other lefties, okay? There have been an abominable number of left-leaning people on social media who are acting as though any acknowledgement of the horrors of the Taliban are like CIA war propaganda. It's not just Kyle Kulinski. Lance of the Serfs did it too. Mike from PA did it too. Remember that article where it said that the Americans pulling out of Afghanistan could lead to a retraction of women's rights? Remember that? And people were like, oh, woke occupation. Okay, State Department. Yeah, it will. Because if the Taliban takes over, they are objectively more chauvinist than the existing Afghan government. I mean, of course. But a lot of people, they treat this like the only reason why a person could possibly draw pause at the idea of withdrawal from Afghanistan is because they're like a pro-war hawk, which is such a ridiculously simplistic and stupid understanding of the issue at hand. Now, I want to say this, if I will. I am 51-49 on us pulling out of Afghanistan, and the reason for that is because it feels like what's happening right now is an inevitable consequence of things that have already taken place, and all we've really done by staying there longer is prolong the fall, like we're Spider-Man holding up the rubble of a collapsing building, and eventually we just have to, like, duck out and let it fall, because there's no other alternative. I used to think, like, if we invested enough money, if we invested enough time, but we have, and it's not doing anything, and we could do it better, but we're not going to, you know? Like, if I could somehow magically control the US government and invest a real amount of money, a real amount of time and effort into the project of rebuilding Afghanistan, then maybe something good could come of that. But it seems like that's not politically viable. It seems like that's not going to happen. It seems like this is just... It's like pulling a knife out of somebody, like surgeons pulling a knife out of somebody when they've already been stabbed. Like, it's the inevitable... Does anyone understand what I'm saying? Now, I want to be clear about this. The thing that's frustrated me is that a lot of people on the left pretend that us pulling out of Afghanistan would be a good thing. Like, that the Afghan people are, like, just waiting to yearn and breathe free to remove the American occupation. Make no mistake. The American occupation was relatively small and relatively cheap, all things considered. We didn't have like 100,000 people over there. We had a few thousand, and they served the purpose of keeping the Taliban from advancing, because the Taliban knew that if they killed U.S. soldiers, we would retaliate tenfold and carpet bomb their mountains, and America is like a deterring force. It's the same thing that we did for Rojava. It's the reason why Assad and Turkey weren't shelling, the Rojavans, is because if you kill an American soldier, you cause an incident, and we are very strong, and we're very scary, and it's nice being on top. And in our absence, the Taliban have no one to kill but other Afghans, and that doesn't promote international unrest. But for God's sake, let's be honest about what's happening here, okay? Let's not lie to ourselves and pretend that, like, there will be no consequences to us pulling out of Afghanistan. Let's not pretend that the Taliban are not a monstrous force who will seize power in the absence of American military influence. And I'm not saying that the Taliban are a known factor. They are monsters. I don't know what the future looks like for Afghanistan, but it's not a good one. It's a really, really bad one. And saying that is not pro-CIA, pro-State Department war propaganda. Do you get me? You understand? It's important to reconcile these perspectives, okay? It's incredibly important to be clear about this. Because right now, people in Afghanistan are panicking. They are panicking. There are people flooding to the airports to get out of there. This is going to cause a new refugee crisis. People want to get the hell out of there. And why wouldn't they? The majority of the people trying to get out of there, by the way, are women. What? Why wouldn't they be? It's the Taliban. That's pretty bad. Canada is already accepting 20,000 vulnerable Afghans. That is spectacular. I'm going to talk about the refugee crisis at the end of whatever segment we're about to do here. This is a good start. This is good. Well, that's good, and we'll get to that, okay? I want to talk a little bit about why the country is falling. It really comes down to us doing a really bad job of propping up a government following the fall of the last one. Their military is lacking in equipment and morale, and they are just being torn through. Does everyone remember that video on Twitter of those Afghan soldiers being executed by the Taliban? This was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. They got rounded up and shot. Remember? Yeah. Stuff like that is pretty demoralizing for the population. The Afghan military, while technically larger than the Taliban's military, does not have the cohesion or the coordination to meaningfully resist the... Now, this is a little bit of speculation on my part, but I'm going to say comparatively better trained Taliban warriors, you know? The degree of training that goes into admittance into the Afghan military, I don't know if it's sufficient to fight off, if not a well-trained terrorist organization, then at the very least an organization that has roots in American military training. Does that make sense? I've heard there are even units of Afghan military just defecting and surrendering without a fight. Yeah, you know why? Because that lessens their chances of being executed. Right now, there are, across Afghanistan, in Kabul, there are people burning flags and documents that tie them to the United States government. In the embassy, they are burning and destroying anything that officially connects them to us, because anybody who is found to have collaborated with America gets the bullet. So they are just frantically destroying everything that's going to incite the Taliban to shoot them, you know? Yeah, if they're lucky. It is a really, really bad situation over there. No, Vosh, this isn't even close. The ANA was actually very well equipped and trained. I deployed there 2 weeks ago. I've heard contrary accounts. I'm sure there's a lot of variance. There's not a lot of cohesion in the Afghan military, so yeah. It would, I imagine it would. Why are people saying Klus? What did I say? When I misspeak, please just let me know. I'm an idiot. You have to let me know. What did I do? I said Klus? As opposed to what? What did I say Klus instead of? Instead of close? Okay. Okay. All right. Just, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. Shut up. Whatever. Jesus. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Sure. Whatever. Yeah, this is from 8 hours ago. The Taliban take over the governor's house. Well, living it up, I guess. Just, it's a nice house. Yeah, it's a nice house. Just living it up. Why do people have such a problem with this? It's just dudes vibing. Honestly. You know, I imagine to Afghan people, the sight of, like, a militarized terrorist organization occupying a governor's house is probably not entirely dissimilar to some of the images that came out of the January 6th Capitol riot, except if the January 6th Capitol riot had ended in a successful seizure of the White House, and there was no chance of it being retaken, you know? I feel, yeah, it's, so, somewhat worse, significantly worse, even. So much worse. Look, what's gonna happen from this point forward, in Afghanistan, nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. In large part because it's difficult to predict the direction that the Taliban are going to go once they have essentially uncontested control of Afghanistan. Now, I want to be clear about this. There is no reason to believe that the Taliban are even remotely inclined to do anything good with their power. Okay? I just want to be clear about that. So please don't interpret what I'm about to say as me, like, going, they could be all right once they take power. I don't believe that. However, there are different degrees of bad they can engage in. It's possible that they will go hardline fundamentalist and just start purging their country of undesirables, literally just mass graves and death camps across the country as an attempt to sort of ideologically purify the population. That is a thing that can happen. It's also possible that they will attempt to functionally replace the existing government and lead as a semi-legitimate, not good, but semi-legitimate provincial government that attempts to maintain the relative stability of statehood. As in, by semi-legitimate, I mean like they make an effort to maintain infrastructure and do the things that a government might otherwise do, while also killing lots of people. Again, we're really not playing, none of this is good, okay? How bad it can end up being really, really varies, except they have like zero experience with that, right? Just like the current Afghan government. No, but I can't say for sure which direction they're going to go in. There are 1,000 paths they could take. I sincerely hope whatever they do ends up being the least bad thing they can do. But I don't know. We sent, I think, 3,000 troops in to help evacuate the embassy in Kabul. Is that correct? That was U.S. It was 3,000, right? Evacuate embassy. 3,600? Wow. That is quite a lot of people. U.S. troops begin arriving in Kabul to evacuate embassy staff as Taliban seize major cities. So we're essentially just trying to pull out the diplomats and everything we can. And that's understandable. By the way, 3,000 from the U.S., 600 from the U.K. Thank you, thank you. By the way, I saw people, left-leaning people on Twitter, who were treating this like the beginning of another wave of troops in Afghanistan. What is it with Twitter and foreign policy? What is this unholy mixture of feces and piss? What? Yeah, they just don't understand how it works. Yeah. Anyway, they're securing the evacuation of embassy staff, which makes sense. And of course, do you want us to just abandon those people? Jesus. In all likelihood, the reason why they didn't do this immediately when they first withdrew is because that would be an implicit concession that they knew Afghanistan was going to fall to Taliban anyway. Oh, wow. Yeah. Taliban gains in Afghanistan. April 13th, 2021 to August 12th. Look at that. That is unbelievable. And there would be a significant difference, by the way, between August 12th, 2 days ago, and August 14th today. They're making progress that quickly. Is the war really over or will be back? How can I say? I will say this much, though. What we did in Afghanistan does not work. It does not work, okay? The project of state building is not something that you can do from afar. It is not something that you can do as a proxy, a collection of soldiers sent there to rebuild democracy in a foreign land. This process just does not function. The essential underlying mechanisms of civil society cannot be put into place by another group of people. It has to be built up by the country itself. If you want a clear and stark distinction between this working and this not working, take a look at what happened to Japan after World War II. I could spend an hour talking about it, but seriously, I invite you to just look it up. There are critical differences, or Germany, yeah, though that got split, you know. There are critical differences in the ways we handled the project of state building there and here. This was never going to work. I don't know what we could have done better, apart for definitely not invading to begin with. And, man, what else do I have to say? Okay, first of all, there are going to be conservatives who are saying that what's happening right now is on Biden. Please be clear. If Trump had done what he promised he would do and pull all the troops out during his term, something which he wanted to do but didn't have the balls to do, by the way, the same thing would have happened, and they would have defended it, and they would have said they don't give a fuck about Afghan people, and who the fuck cares? So please do not... This was an inevitable consequence of a full withdrawal, which conservatives were pledging Trump would do during his term. It just... No. No. And as a follow-up, by the way, there is a possibility that our absence from the region might spark some positive change. It's important to keep in mind that our presence in Afghanistan is one of the radicalizing elements that leads to the Taliban being able to recruit. How do you think the Taliban is able to get so many soldiers on their side? What do you think? Imagine everything you've learned about alt-right recruitment, because that's what the Taliban basically is, just Islamo-fascism. What do you think motivates them to join these wild fucking terrorist groups? Well, in many cases, the constant occupation of the American military is an incredibly effective radicalizing effect on the young people. You saw the video we just looked at. Those guys, the Taliban, did they look old? I think a lot of people, when they think of the Taliban, they think of like 40 or 50-year-old, like, Cold War veteran left. No, they're like kids. I bet most of the people in that video were younger than me. And why? Because they got radicalized by the Afghan equivalent of what happens to alt-righters over here in the States. The difference is, the U.S. is a strong and autonomous nation with no invaders. Afghanistan is a fucked nation that has its occupants still in their capital and the rest. It's the same thing, yeah, that happens with Hamas, with the Palestinians. You give people an excuse to radicalize, and they will radicalize. So maybe, in the absence of America, there will be less steam behind the Taliban, and there will be internal fracturing within their own circles, and that will lead to more and less radical divisions of the Taliban fighting with one another, or they'll lose public support in the areas where they have some tenuous hold over it, and maybe something good can come out of that. I don't think it will, but maybe something good could come out of that. And even if something good did come out of that, by the way, it would be after years of bloodshed and terror. So again, this isn't really a hopium moment. This is more of a distant, past the horizon potential for hopium guesswork moment. Additionally, we should accept as many Afghan refugees as possible. We should. Yeah, we should. Yeah. Yeah, we should. Yeah. Yeah, we should. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yes, sir. Yes, we should. Should probably won't, though. Yeah, we probably won't. But we should. This is our fault. This is literally, directly, empirically, objectively, our fault. We absolutely should. If law is an effort to proceduralize morality, which it kind of is, don't rape, don't murder, keep society operating, so on and so on, we should accept refugees. Yeah, we should. And by the way, I want to be clear. That would be a difficult project, in large part because, with all respect, Afghan refugees don't really have that much to offer the United States in terms of immediate economic value. Afghans' literacy rate is not especially high, but we don't do it, and we shouldn't do it, because it benefits us. We should do it because it's the right thing to do. We owe them a hell of a lot more than this, by the way. I just want to preempt that. There are people who are going to say they're not even literate, and it's true, a lot of them aren't. We should bring them over anyway. Besides, our population is flagging, and they'll have kids, and those kids will benefit from the U.S. education system, and they'll be as literate and educated as any other people in this country. So, give them a shot, huh? We do have a severe debt to the people of Afghanistan, you know? We do. Absolutely we do. Make room, buddy. We got a big country. We got a big country and a lot of free space, okay? Most Americans in the comment section aren't literate either. True. Very, very true. Incredibly true. We should. Is possible, though? Oh, it's possible. Yeah, it's 100% possible. More Dem voters, too. I honestly don't know if Afghan refugees would vote Democrat. Like, it's a pretty reactionary country. They're more in line with Republicans in basically every way, you know? Keep in mind, Republicans and Islamo-fascists, and not all Afghan refugees are Islamo-fascists, but the reactionary end of that, basically, I mean, different aesthetics, same underlying beliefs, you know? Maybe we're bringing in future Republican voters. I don't really care. We still owe them. Explain Islamo-fascism, please. It's just fascism, but usually when we talk about fascism, we're generally referring to the types of fascism that manifest in Christian countries, or in countries where Christianity is used as one of the bulwarks of fascist thought. But then it's Islam instead of that, you know? It's basically the same thing. It's just, yeah. Yeah, fascism with Islamic characteristics instead of Christian characteristics, you know? Most of what we term fascism here in the West is kind of Christian fascism in the sense that Christianity is used both aesthetically and substantively as a method of both aesthetizing the fascist movement and also of justifying their actions. And then when Islam does it, it's just the same, but it's with, you know? It's not really fascism, it's actually quite different once you read into what they believe. Yeah, there are, like, principal differences in the stated goals, but it kind of seems like the outcome of Islamo-fascists taking over underdeveloped countries ends up being pretty similar to the outcome of regular fascists taking over underdeveloped countries, which is kind of the same as, like, other... Like, these tendencies seem to arise from... Vosh, do we want to be letting what you describe as fascists into the country? The people we'd be letting into the country would be fleeing the Taliban. Also, wait, there are so many things I have to say to that. First of all, they're fleeing the Taliban. Second of all, even if every single Afghan refugee was a fascist, yes, we owe their country a debt, and the people of their country a debt. Third of all, the average Afghan civilian is not a fascist. Yeah, so. Wait, are there people in chat who disagree with that second point? Like, we fuck over Afghanistan, and we have the chance to accept refugees, and you guys are like, oh, hold on, these brown people are too reactionary for me. No, just let them die to the Taliban. Are you kidding me? This is a joke? There are people in chat who actually believe that. Why'd you say the refugees would be closer to Republicans? You can be closer to Republicans without being an outright fascist. The worst of them are the Taliban. I imagine the average Afghan civilian is more reactionary than the average American. I admit I don't know that. I'm gonna guess that's the case when it comes to issues on like gay and like women stuff. I'm just gonna guess that's the case, and I'm probably right. So in those issues, they would align more with the right. But in spite of their reactionary tendencies, I still think they should be here because we owe them. You know? Yeah. Don't you try and stunlock me. The Taliban would have inevitably taken over anyway. I'm just not sure how it's the fault of the states. We invaded them. We destabilized their government. We literally built the Taliban up. We funded them for a long time. The whole everything. We did everything. We're the chess masters. We did everything to set all this up. Not everything. There are always local factors. But goddamn, then we're responsible for a lot of it. I admit I'm surprised there's any controversy on here. What's your take on the Taliban not being considered fascist? Okay. Hold on. The Taliban. I admit, I haven't actually done this since before I started streaming, but sure. Let's take a look. All right. Let's take a peek. What are their actual viewpoints? Yeah, well, they're not good. Ideology. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. The Taliban's ideology has been described as an innovative form of Sharia combining Pashtun tribal codes, radical Deobandi. I don't know enough about Islam to be specific with my understanding of the particular I like the term innovative, by the way. It's a very odd. It's like we're being sold on like a tech startup, you know? Yeah, like the Taliban, an innovative approach to forbade pork and alcohol and many types of consumer technology such as music, television, filming, and the internet, and most recreational activities such as kite flying and keeping pigeons or other pets were also forbidden. What can you even do? And the birds were killed according to the Taliban's ruling. Movie theaters were closed and repurposed as mosques. Taking photographs and displaying portraits was forbidden, as it was considered a form of idolatry. Women were banned from working. Requested to observe. Turns outside their household. Prayer was made compulsory. Gambling was banned. Thieves were punished by amputating their hands or feet. The ban of opium cultivation and drug trafficking, and the thing that bothers me about this though is that far right people are incredibly fucking hypocritical. You know, like keep in mind the difference between what Nazis were and what Nazis pretended to be. You know? Yeah, like the opium ban, for example. These fuckers do not ban opium. And there are plenty of Taliban insurgents who are going off, like, jerking it to pornography. Fucking Osama bin Laden had a computer with, like, anime memes on it, okay? Like, the idea that they're all living in this, like, perfect form of Islamic relation. About 10% of Afghan population persecuted during the rule. Cool. A small Christian community was also persecuted by the Taliban. They announced they would enforce badges on Afghanistan's Hindu population, which has been compared to the treatment of Jews in Nazi Germany. Consistency. They have a whole segment on consistency. The Taliban ideology was not static. So they... curious. Explanations, criticisms. Yeah, this only talks about the religious aspect of their rule. Human trafficking, oppression of women, violence against civilians, discrimination against Hindus and Sikhs, violence against aid workers and Christians. I guess my real question would be, there are elements here that I'm curious about. So as we all know, I'm a big fan of the 14 points. We all know I'm a big Umberto Eco fan, right? It seems like there are elements 14 points, not 14 words. Shut up. It seems like there are elements here that are, like, really clean and obvious, okay? So, like, let's take a look at what's really, really obvious, okay? Cult of tradition. That's obviously, that's clearly, we're clearly there, okay? We've arrived, okay? Fine. The rejection of modernism. Yes, yeah, okay. These feel like gimmies, you know? The cult of action for action's sake. I don't know about this one. If they believe dreams are a form of revelation, it's possible that, at least in theory, they value the idea of introspection as a form of their religious asceticism, you know? I don't actually know. I would need to research more. Disagreement is treason. I can't fathom this one not being correct. This one feels like it's probably definitely correct. Fear of difference, yes. Again, every ethnic minority, sexual minority, gets thrown out by them. Appeal to social frustration. Yep. You can see this in the recruitment propaganda they use. Them and ISIS all the time. It's always an appeal to social frustration. That's how you radicalize people to the far right. The obsession. Do the Taliban have like a JQ? Like, basically, like, do they think there's a collective narrative to describe? I know, like, what would it be? I know they hate Jews, but because you're mispronouncing asceticism? Asceticism. Wait, but guys, the Western influence thing is true. I know they have the narrative of Western influence destroying the Middle East, but I mean, like, do they have a conspiratorial and all-explaining conspiracy theory that, like, unifies all of their weird ideological... Yes, Vosh, they use infidels. Can I say 50-50 on this one? The enemy is both strong and weak. I don't think they do this. I don't know if they do this. I don't know. I guess I'd have to see their propaganda. I don't know how they treat pacifists. I don't know. Do they have compulsory recruitment? Does the Taliban, like, recruit from the cities they conquer? They conscript? Okay, then this one might be it. Contempt for the weak. So, I know they act like they have contempt for the weak, but in their rhetoric, do they talk about defending the weak? Because there's a clear difference here. Fascists don't talk about, like, the meek shall inherit the earth. To fascists, the world is a forge or a crucible meant to separate the strong from the weak, and they want to be the strong. Now, the Taliban, of course, they recruit, and they're a militarized terrorist group, but are they... Yes, they constantly talk about protecting the oppressed Muslims. Yeah, that to me, yeah, so this one does not work. They don't act like they're contemptuous of the weak. They talk about defending the weak. I'm pretty sure that's the case, yeah. Everyone is educated to become a hero. I don't know about that one. Machismo and weaponry. Yep. That one seems like a clear shot for me. That one feels like But fascists talk about defending the weak whites? No, they don't. Fascists traditionally do not talk about defending the weak whites. Their argument is that whites are by their nature the strong, and the only reason they're kept underfoot is because they're kept asleep. They're not aware of the fact that they're stronger than the rest. Fascists don't talk about liberating the weak. They talk about culling the weak. They consider weak whites to be the ones who would engage in miscegenation or race treason. They want to protect the white children. Well, sure, children are weak, but not, like, weak conceptually. Not like children are literally weak, you know, like, because they're babies, you know. Selective populism, I don't necessarily know. I mean, it's selective populism for Muslims, I assume. That probably fits. That probably fits, yeah. Yeah, probably, yeah. And Urfascism speaks Newspeak. I know literally nothing about the language. I mean, I literally don't speak the language they speak, so I don't know the particulars of the vernacular or the profile of the Taliban's propaganda tactics. Undermine the government and reach out to the world. The propaganda campaign at the village level is important for recruiting youth and acquiring local support. Mosques are favorite places for the propagandists, and they always seek to convince the villagers that the international forces are fighting against Islam and it is their holy obligation to stand up for jihad. Quoting from different religious sources and fatwas, they describe the international sources as occupiers and the Karzai government as their puppet. I mean, this is half true, unfortunately. And tell the local population... Oh, by the way, this is a really good point. See? The presence of American occupiers are literally one of the central focuses of their propaganda wing. And tell the local population that providing them support at any level is an un-Islamic act, hence punishable by the holy warriors. This is kind of obsession with the plot. Yeah, to varying levels. They use night letters for propaganda purposes as well as threatening local people. For example, if they want to close down a school, clinic, or suspect that a local elder or some villagers are providing support to the occupiers or the government, they throw warning night letters at a known place of the village, warning them beforehand. Internet propaganda. Wait, this is what I'm interested in. The internet has proved the fastest and most useful propaganda tool for the Taliban during these years. They update and post all this data in 5 languages: Pashto, Dari, Urdu, Arabic, and English. When any websites get closed by the CIA or the coalition forces, they shift it to another server and put it online with a slightly different name. That's so funny to think of. Like the CIA and like the Taliban both with the shades on, like hacking, you know, like get jihad 123.com, you know, yeah. Interesting. All right. I feel like we could go on forever, but I think I have a conclusion after all of this, okay? My conclusion is that while I'm sure there is an overwhelming amount of overlap between the Taliban and what I would term fascism, and additionally, that one could lead into the other incredibly easily, I think that totalitarian theocrats are probably a more accurate descriptor of what the Taliban are than fascists. That's not to say that there isn't a heavy overlap between those things, but I think a more accurate descriptor would be, yeah, totalitarian theocrats. In large part because traditional fascists don't really use religion anywhere near as aggressively as they do, and their goals are more religiously inspired than they are, like, state-building inspired, and they don't talk about the homeland as much as they do about the people, and there's a few... Yeah, okay, well, there we go. Still bad, by the way. Still bad, by the way. Still bad. It's not good. Taliban's bad. Not really totalitarian either, though. I mean, you can't use the radio, photograph, kite flying, or the... Yeah, they banned birds. The thing is, the degree to which they can express their totalitarianism seems to be largely constrained by the fact that they're not really a government at the moment, but fascism is also an element of statecraft, but I wouldn't shy away from calling the January 6th Capitol rioters fascists. Like, if they took control of the government, all the state-level elements of fascism would be made manifest, and likewise, if the Taliban had full control of their government and the power to enact it, I'm pretty sure they would be every bit as totalitarian as we could imagine. Yeah, the term totalitarian doesn't really have a super strict definition anyway. I think that, as I understood it, generally speaking, totalitarianism and authoritarianism are usually distinguished by the extent to which the government invests itself in the lives of the people. So, like, monarchies are authoritarian, but, like, if you live in feudal France or whatever, like, it's true that you have no political power, but it's not like the monarchy is constantly observing everything you do at every part of your day. There isn't like an effort on the part of the people who control that society to control every element of your life down to the most minute detail. Whereas the Taliban mandate prayer. They disallow paintings. There are elements of their ideology which require the constant monitoring of the people in the societies they control. And maybe they aren't powerful enough to perfectly exercise that control, but it is, by God, something they are trying to do. So the CCP is totalitarian as well? Yes. Stalin's Soviet Union was objectively totalitarian. Unquestionably. One of the most in all of human history. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Of course. Undeniably, yeah. Would you say the Taliban are showing Sigma male energy? No, it's very, very, very theta. Very lambda male. It's not good. It's not good. Did you see the Twitter thread with Dylan Burnham, Mike from PA? Nah, show it. What's the difference between authoritarian and totalitarian? Aristocracy or a monarchy or an oligarchy or a theocracy. Totalitarian is one in which the government gets directly involved in the management of your life, where it's no longer just a matter of you have to pay your taxes and you can't revolt. Now it's you have to pay your taxes, you can't revolt. There are secret police everywhere. There are people monitoring your household. There are people observing your family. There are people making sure your beard is cut to the right length, making sure your house doesn't carry seditious materials, making sure, like, it goes way, 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 way beyond. Can you run the 14 points in the GOP? I have before. I think the modern Republican Party is absolutely fascist. I think that is the direction they push in every time they get the power to do so. It is, of course, something of a sliding scale. All right, let's see. Just call them theocratic fascists. I think theocratic totalitarian. You confused the CCP with the CCCP earlier. Oh, did I misread it? Oh, the Chinese Communist Party, not the CCP. Oh, I misread it. Sorry. The Chinese Communist Party is a totalitarian. No. There are elements of the Chinese Communist Party that are, and there are elements of it where they're fairly hands-off. It seems like there's a lot the Chinese government is willing to let you get away with as long as you don't go against the state. As in, their moralism doesn't extend beyond the pragmatic elements of managing statecraft. Isn't the internet basically banned? It's not just about banning the internet. It's that the Chinese government doesn't seem to care that much about what you're doing as long as what you're doing isn't interfering with the economic or social productivity. But they're not, I could be wrong, but I don't think they're going like house to house making sure you have like a Mao portrait up in your house. There are elements of the CCP that are totalitarian and elements of it that aren't. Does that make sense? What about the genocide? That has nothing to do with totalitarianism. There are democratic societies that commit genocides. Like ours. Like ours. Does that make sense? Like, there's a high degree of monitoring, but it seems like the monitoring that goes on in the Chinese government has more to do with keeping society stable than it has to do with a sort of prescribed moralism. But I could be wrong on that. I could look more into it. Does that make sense? What kind of slippers do you have? I just got them off Amazon. We're getting into a lot of opinions today. Okay, what are these memes? Hold on. Yes, the Soviet Union was what I would describe to be totalitarian without a doubt. Yeah. If Kabul falls, it would be much worse than the fall of Saigon. Nah. Good one. Good follow-up. Yes. Not even comparable. We have no national interest there at all. Biden is right. Interesting. What is that? Why are there so many lefties who fall back onto being like America First nationalists the nanosecond they get the chance to? It's so fucking weird. Kyle did this too. Come on, Mike, you blocked me when you could not get your dunks because I made the simple statement, Taliban bad. I'll say it, because I'm a Chad, Taliban bad. I believe it. Whew. You still don't understand my position after going back and forth for an hour. Is this because you like to lecture but don't like to listen to those you talk to? Let's see. Anyone saying I support the withdrawal from Afghanistan, just know this withdrawal is a liar, shouldn't be taken seriously. There was no way for the deeply unpopular, incompetent, and corrupt Afghan national government to exist without direct U.S. occupation. For context. Okay. We ally with the worst butchers in the world. This is a joke. I said that it would be worse because many people are making this comparison. The Viet Cong did not want to marry off little girls and take away women's basic human rights. That's true. They, of course, had human rights abuses, but they are not comparable. Never mentioned interests. The Viet Cong is not who took Saigon. It was the North Vietnamese regular army. Are you not aware of the difference? 1, this kind of feels like you're trying to test my intelligence so you can disregard my opinion. Kind of unchill, Mike. Yeah, notice how this isn't even a response to the point. Mike is such a slimy fucking weasel. 2, I know the difference and you're wrong. The North Vietnamese army worked with the Viet Cong to capture Saigon. You can just Google this. They're unrelated point in an effort to try to gatekeep the conversation behind knowledge. This is the what is a TIF? What is sewer socialism? This is that exact thing. And he was wrong again. Lamau, it was the regular Vietnamese military unit representing the nation of North Vietnam. They even paused for 24 hours so the Americans would have time to evacuate. Look immediately. Oh my God! The fall of Saigon, also known as the liberation of Saigon, was the capture of Saigon, the capture of South Vietnam by the People's Army of Vietnam and the Viet Cong. And he highlighted People's Army of Vietnam. Literally! His own screenshot. Making fun of Mike is ableism, and oh man. Actual illiteracy. Guys, this is a good point for letting Afghan refugees in America, okay? We have illiterates in our country already. Read the next sentence, Mike, and the Viet Cong. I never said the North Vietnamese army had no involvement. Just that the Viet Cong did. Stop fishing for dunks. It makes it look like you don't actually care about what you're talking about. The fall of Saigon was good. Say it, Dylan. See, the moment Mike realizes he's on a losing point, he just walks away from it and starts engaging in losing pedantry. It doesn't even matter if the pedantry is inaccurate. It just matters that he's moving away from the original point, which is whether or not this is comparable to the fall of Saigon. He doesn't actually believe anything. Why are you doing this? Do you not care about what is going to happen to all those who will be executed, raped, and have their rights taken away? This had nothing to do with what we were talking about. You are an unbelievably frustrating human being to interact with. The U.S. is ultimately responsible by our creation of the Taliban through our Pakistani allies, the support of the Mujahideen during the war against the Soviets. So everything the Taliban does is something we did. Maybe we should try not interfering for a while. This has nothing to do with what is being talked about here. Jesus Christ. Mike from PA coming in with the dunk. Did you know that actually we propped up the Taliban? So that's why it's good that they're taking Kabul. All I said was that the Taliban was bad. If fascists were taking over a random country, I don't need a policy prescription to know that's bad. You're reading way too much into my tweet. Your analysis is so unbelievably shallow, I could not even call it a kiddie pool. You are undermining Biden's attempt to get us out of this looting war with this babble. Wait! Since when did Mike become a Biden simp? You're undermining Biden's attempt to... Biden is finally trying to get us out of here. What? If you care about the humanitarian costs of our failed war, you'd be supporting immigration of Afghani war refugees, not baying for intervention by the U.S. By the way, notice that Dylan hasn't even talked about intervention from the U.S. and in this tweet thread. It's just been about how the fall of Kabul is going to be really, really bad, you know? But he pivots to that, too. I stated the reality that theocratic fascists taking... Yes! Yes! Dylan takes I have that Dylan Burns backs up at any point or once I can't be attacked on. If you have a problem with it, attack Dylan Burns. Go. I don't care. Go. Yeah. Yes! He's like my shield, you know? You read that as a condemnation of Biden's policy of full military withdrawal. That just sounds like production to me. I've also talked openly many times about our need to take in more Afghan refugees. Okay, so you agreed with Biden then. I do support a drawdown, and I think that Mike from PA isn't just indifferent. He actually likes the idea of Afghan civilians getting murdered and raped by the Taliban. Does anyone else get that feeling here? I think he likes it a little bit. Pretty crazy. Pretty wild stuff. I don't know. He seems so unwilling to just accept. Like, it's not just that he's pro pulling out American troops, which again, I am too. It's that he's unwilling to even condemn the Taliban taking over Kabul. You realize that, right? That's the point he's not willing to accept, that it's bad that the Taliban is taking over Kabul. He can't even accept, like, that he actually can't acknowledge the Taliban is bad. So, I don't know, maybe he dreams, you know? Maybe after lying about being a lawyer and getting dunked on in elections here in the States, the idea of moving over to Afghanistan and participating in the jihad sounds more appealing to him. Maybe he's a victim of the online radicalization. He lied about being a lawyer. There's a whole goddamn meme history to this that I wouldn't have to explain if you were Destiny's community, but he is... Somebody in chat go over it. We have to keep on point. Do you think us not supporting the ANA from afar is going to stop the war? Americans are not the only ones that can kill Mike. The war does not stop with our withdrawal. The least we can do is support the Afghan government within means that are politically viable. There are no ways to support the ANA because it's not a real org. They're not even putting up a real fight. I mean, Jesus, at least read the Afghan papers if you're going to pretend to be a foreign policy expert. Again, Mike does this again. What does this have to do with whether or not Dylan's read the Afghan papers? Like, has he not? Like, what does this even have to do with anything? 60% of the population believes ANA is honest and fair, which is much better than any polling you'll find in support for the Taliban. They have many problems, but don't be hyperbolic about a lack of legitimacy. Dylan has read the Afghan papers. Yeah, of course he has. It's Dylan Burns. He's a fucking nerd. Wait, are you citing a literal CIA front org? My lord. Okay, even Samantha Power would blush. I think I'm done. Dude, I think Mike from PA is actually pro-Taliban. He literally can't even say, I acknowledge that it'd be bad, but there's nothing we can do. He actually cannot say the Taliban is bad. He's pro-Taliban. That is crazy. I didn't know that Mike from PA was so in favor of selling off little girls into like arranged marriages with older men who will rape them, but that's like, damn. I didn't realize he was that far off from the point, but I mean, whatever. Mike from Sharia. I think he just doesn't want to admit the thing that he wants leads to a bad thing. Yeah, in reality, it's because he has the like cognitive abilities of a child. This is what happens when your moral reasoning doesn't grow past like 6th grade, you know? I think pulling out is good. That means that there can't be bad things that happen. It's like, it's actually like, legitimately, it's like, I gotta control my ableism. We gotta. You know that meme of the guy driving the car and he's got his hand on the wheel and it's a POV perspective and his arm is super muscularism, you know? That's me. Yeah, it's this one. Yeah, the trying not to be ableist, you know? I'm trying not to have a gamer moment. Why is it in Minecraft? I don't know. Why not? All right, let's continue the shit show. Let's go! Please tell me of any other polling org that did the polling so well. Take issue with how the polling was done, not Asia. I hate Gray Zone, but if they did polling, I would need to find out if they messed up in the polling before I could dismiss it. Same reason why we don't completely dismiss internal campaign polling or polling from semi-partisan organizations. Hello, Shu. I'll explain it to you. It's very likely that the CIA front group headquartered in Washington, D.C. may only publicize information useful to the U.S. effort to stay in Afghanistan. Also, the methods of polling a country where only a fraction own a phone and only 43% are literate. So he's not answering. The idea that some poll you found Googling is evidence of our puppet state's legitimacy as opposed to the actual evidence on the ground. I don't know what to tell you. There was no legitimacy because there was no resistance to the Taliban. I like how Mike, like, is Mike saying that the Taliban is more popular with Afghan civilians? Like, what position is he defending here? Polling people is extremely difficult in countries that are underdeveloped and in civil war. All I can do is work with the information I have available in front of me, and this is one of, if not the most in-depth report done on the matter that has the least problematic methods of conducting the survey. In counter to my data, you provided one quote from one Afghan. Not saying my data is perfect, but you can't even provide any. An important data point is the fact that the ANA has dissolved like mist in front of the Taliban. They aren't even resisting, Dylan. Many surrender and many resist. Do I need to send you combat reports? What is going on? Mike used to be a Republican. Yeah, wasn't Mike a Republican, but then he switched to Democrat to run as a Democrat? Like, he switched like this or something? Like, because it'd be easier to run? That's pretty wild. I can't believe I get called a grifter by these guys, you know? Okay, how... He ran against the Republican who primaried his mom? Oh, it was like an Oedipal thing, I see. Let's see. They did what to his mom? He wanted to fuck the guy who fucked his mom or something. I don't know. I'm gonna primary your mom? Yeah. So you would have opposed pressure being put on Pinochet by the international community or any support being given to those resisting him. I would have simply not had the CIA support a military coup in that country and allowed the Democratic leader to continue his Democratic term in office. Did you ever listen to Mike Gravel? By the way, Mike from PA not even saying he would support international pressure against fucking Pinochet, by the way. Literally nothing. Just completely... Just... This is what happens when your only moral argument is being anti-American. I don't think the U.S. should have supported him, but I also think the international community should not support the far right as a rule of thumb. No need to dig up my dead boss to dunk on Mike. That's really scummy, and you know it. Good luck on your pro-intervention career. You are heartless. Yeah, Mike from... not Mike, sorry. Dylan Burns, I have a couple of salient criticisms for you, okay? You're off with feelings, okay? Mike from PA is actually an algorithm designed to produce the worst takes possible, all right? You're getting mad typing away, okay? And somewhere in Langley, some CIA pet project designed to irritate people on the left is quietly chugging away using the same amount of toaster, occupying your time and energy, okay? This is the equivalent of getting angry at one of those bobble clowns that you punch and they come back up and you punch them again, you know? If he put quotation marks around what worked, so he did it. There's not actually any meaning. And if you asked him to explain why he did that, he wouldn't answer. He would ask you if you know what a TIFF is. He also has an average of 2K Twitch viewers. The only thing that keeps him up are a couple of Oilers and the fact that he sucks up to the Majority Report and Hassan like a fucking degenerate. He sucks up to them so goddamn hard, and it keeps him afloat, you know?